Ever is fine. Councillor Barlow is ready. This is great news.
Okay, when you're ready, Chair.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of Personnel Committee at 10 a.m. at Blackdown House on Wednesday, the 10th of September. I'm your chair for today, Councillor Eleanor Rylance, and I'd like to welcome anybody watching live online via the live stream on YouTube. We're now going to start the meeting by doing a roll call of those present, and we will do apologies afterwards. Debbie, over to you, please.
Can we pause for a minute, Chair, while I sort out a microphone that I can see across the room? Thank you.
Yes.
Otherwise, it seems pointless doing a roll call.
It does. Have you put your pass on it, Yehudi? Yeah, okay, it's all done. And Sue, have you logged yourself in as well? Excellent, we can go ahead. Debbie,
Thank you,
over to you,
Chair.
please.
Okay, let's start with you, Chair, Councillor Eleanor Rylance.
Present.
Do you have any declarations, Chair?
I have no declarations.
Thank you. Moving on to Councillor John Loudon.
Present, Debbie. No declarations, thank you.
Thank you very much. Back in the room, I see Councillor Tim Dumper. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning, Debbie, and I have no declarations either.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Hayward, good morning.
Morning, present, and no declarations, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Councillor Yehudi Levine. Good morning.
Good morning. I am present and I got one declaration. A very bad habit that I picked up on the continent. Whenever I come to a new work environment, I introduce myself with a treat, and this time a piece of cake. Thank you.
And we are extremely grateful to Councillor Levine for having supplied today's cake. Thank you.
Next to Councillor Eileen Ragg. Good morning, Eileen.
Good morning, Debbie. No declarations.
Thank you. And then Councillor Susan Westman, who's sitting in as a reserve this morning. Good morning.
Morning. No declarations.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Agenda item 1, therefore, which is minutes of the previous meeting held on the 15th of April 2025. Does anybody have any clarifications, alterations, or supplements they wish to add to these minutes, or can we deem that they are fit to pass? I see nobody indicating that they want to speak on this item, so I'm going to presume that we are happy to accept them. Thank you very much, everybody. Agenda item 2, apologies, that's already been done. Agenda item 3, declaration
Not quite,
of
Chair.
interest. Ooh,
Let me do the apologies.
apologies, of course.
I admire your efficiency, but if I may, I have apologies from Councillor Paul Arnott, who Councillor Susan Westman is substituting today. Thank you. Councillors Aurora Bailey, Brian Bailey, Kevin Blakey, Jenny Brown, and Nick Hookway. Does anybody else know of any other apologies that I need to record? I'll take that as a no. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Right, moving on to agenda item 4, which is public speaking. Now, I understand that 2 members of the public registered to speak, but they were unable to attend and have sent in a statement instead, each, which Debbie is now going to read out. Thank you, Debbie.
Yeah, before I do, are there any other councillors who've joined us today who want to make a declaration? I'll take that as a no. Obviously, you've got the opportunity if one arises during the meeting. Thank you. So our first statement is from Paul Quantrill, who couldn't be here today, but he's asked me to read out the following statement. Israel is guilty of genocide in Gaza and has been for decades in Palestine. Israel is guilty of apartheid in Palestine, and as with the South African government in the 90s, they should be made to realise the world will not stand by and let their actions continue. Companies in our high streets, such as Barclays Bank, McDonald's, Next, Starbucks, and L'Oreal, and many, many more, are complicit in supporting and funding this Israeli government and their military campaigns in Gaza and large parts of Palestine. Anything this council can do to stop the funding will hopefully bring peace to the people of Palestine. And that's a statement from Paul Quantrill. Would you like me to read the next one, Chair?
I understand it's on the same topic, so yes, please, and then I can read the response that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this statement is from Teresa Sanders, and the statement reads as follows. Palestinians are facing the most horrific violence imaginable now. It could not be more urgent that LGPS funds be divested, ensuring public services monies are not funneled into companies which are enabling the Israeli government's apartheid and genocide against Palestinians. In this context, there are clear legal duties not to be complicit in assisting these atrocities. Many councils are listening and taking positive action to stop aiding Israel. This council is not powerless, and it must end all financial ties linked to Israel. So that's a statement from Teresa Saunders. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Obviously, I think probably many of us share the concerns expressed in these letters about the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Gaza. Councillor Ragg, you have something to say before I...
Thank you, Chair. Well, I used to be chair of the Devon Pension Fund, Pension Investment Fund, and I can assure the people who are concerned, I think many of us are as well, about the investments. They are funded, they are handled by fund managers, and we do make those concerns known about ethical concerns that we have, and they are taken very, very seriously indeed. And I'm sure that that will be passed on by the committee, Pensions and Investment Fund Committee at Devon County Council, who manage the funds, not just for this district council, other district councils, teachers, all the professionals.
I have a response.
That certainly will be the message that go back to the fund managers.
So I don't know whether Mr. Quantrill and Mrs. Sanders are watching online, but we do care. So what Councillor Ragg has said is completely right. And I actually have a statement. It's not very full of detail, but I hope it will satisfy to a certain measure some of the questions that have been addressed to us. And the statement is this: thank you very much for your statements. The Council's pension fund is managed by the Devon Pension Fund, as Councillor Ragg pointed out, and any concerns should be raised with them directly. And I think, noting what Councillor Ragg said, we do, however, note the points that you've made this morning, and I'm sure many of us do share the concerns. So if you are able to address your concerns to the Devon Pension Fund and ask them those specific questions, I'm sure you will get a more precise answer than we're able to give you. So thank you very much, Councillor Ragg, and thank you for the questions.
May I just add
Yes,
that
please do.
even through their county councillors to make representation to the fund.
And thank you to the two members of the public. Oh, Mr. Paul, Councillor Hayward, I do apologise. I don't know if the councillors cancel each other out.
Just to follow on from Councillor Ragg, so I'm attending 3 meetings in the next couple of weeks. One is as an employee of the Devon Pension Fund, one as an employer, contributing employer, and one as Devon County Councillor. And I'll be raising similar concerns and frustrations myself at the time. And that's someone with Jewish heritage. Thank you.
Yeah, and I know that for some years, some of us have been asking questions of the ethics behind the investments that we necessarily make as a local authority, and in the larger bodies in which those investments are held, and how traceable and ethical those investments are. So it is something that we are not unaware of and has been crossing our radar, not specifically about Gaza, but about other issues as well. And so we thank those members of the public for those questions. Councillor Dumper, you have a question? Or
Yeah, just in following on from that, Chair, I just wondered whether it was an appropriate thing for us as Personnel Committee to pass any motion regarding this, perhaps showing our support. I see a shaking head and...
not on this specific committee. I suspect it would be a motion to full council if such a thing were to come forward.
Which we haven't got until mid-next month.
Mid-October. Mid-October, indeed. Okay, thank you very much for those questions and for those answers, everybody. Moving on to agenda item 5, which is matters of urgency. There are no matters of urgency identified for today. Agenda item 6, confidential and exempt items. We have no confidential or exempt items to consider today. And then moving on to the substantive part of our meeting is agenda item 7, which is our annual health and safety report. This is to be introduced by Matt Blythe, who is sitting over there in the outside seats. Good morning, Matt. Would you like to introduce your report, please?
Thank you, Chair. The report in front of the Member State is an update from the 24-25 period regarding the Council's responsibilities around health and safety. I apologise, it's a little bit late in the day compared to a previous year, but of course it's just the timings of the committee. But just to give a flavour, we've also added in the first quarter information as well, just to sort of show what's been going on since then. So the report is really just to lay out the work that's been ongoing in terms of protecting our staff, our customers and those people affected by our work activities, and hopefully it will be relatively self-explanatory and there are no items that require specific action from yourselves. So the Health and Safety at Work Act does impose responsibilities on the council as an employer to look after both its employers and employees and non-employees, and it sets out some of the key areas that we need to carry out in order to do that. We do employ a small team of officers, specialists in health and safety, to help us deliver that, to offer the council competent advice. Our Principal Environmental Health Officer, Jeremy Pritchard, he leads the team, and then we have 2 health and safety officers, Mark and Oliver. Oliver tends to specialise in street scene work, and Mark tends to be more associated with the officers, but we do try and make sure that there's resilience within the team and they're able to cross over and offer advice across the different teams. There are also responsibilities with regard to unions and make sure that we engage with them. We have a joint consultative committee where we do undertake work with employees and the union. I have to say that is something that we're just trying to get back up and running again following a brief hiatus. So we're looking to get that organised in the not too distant future. But we also have regular meetings with Unison through HR, and Jeremy attends those, so if there are any union type issues, we can pick those up. So I've tried to give a flavour of some of the key areas that sort of reflect health and safety performance within the organisation. So one of those is obviously the number of accidents we get, and there's a list there in table 1 of the number of accidents that we received over the year. There has been an increase in the numbers over the previous year. Some of that, I think, can be explained through an increase in the number of near misses. So a near miss is where there's been no actual outcome but had the potential to cause harm. It's really important that we encourage those sort of incidents to be reported, because that way we can stop things happening before they actually cause an actual accident. So we do believe there's been a certain amount of good communication, particularly within street scene, with Oliver's work there to make sure that we are picking up on those near misses. And the other thing to pick out as well in there is we're also recording the events where there's been like a stone thrown out from a strimmer, and that technically is also a near miss. So when you sort of build those in, we think those explain the majority of the increase. So as you see, the majority are related to street scene. Perhaps not surprisingly, they are the sort of the highest risk. They're the most out in the community who are dealing with those. But interestingly, we also get quite a number of members of the public who are also affected. The majority of those would tend to be slips and trips and those sort of things, more sort of insurance as opposed to health and safety at work type issues. And then an ongoing list of other areas that we get covered. One other thing just to mention as well, I'll talk about it in a second, but we also have a number of we have a separate process for reporting violent and aggressive incidents, and there's a bit of crossover. Sometimes people use the wrong system, so some exist in this table and some exist in separate tables. That also is just something that will resolve over time. More serious outcomes need to be reported to the health and safety executives, who have a duty to report certain more serious accidents to the HSE. Last year we had 4 of those sort of incidents, and we outlined those there. As you can see, all of them are relatively minor in terms of the actual accident, but the consequence is more severe than perhaps you might say. So for instance, we had someone who slipped and broke a shin. The actual investigation didn't reveal any particular problems that we could follow up, but clearly the outcome was quite serious. So we have reported those. We've had no follow-up from the HSE, no further input from them, and also we do always carry out a review of those sort of accidents. If we look at by type, as I said, the vast majority sort of fit into the other category. They're not really open to any particular interpretation. But after that, this is table 2, apologies, moving on. Majority of slips and trips, again, this fits in with national statistics. Next highest is near misses, as I've already explained, and then various other ones, and also, as I noticed in there, dealing with violence and aggression is also mentioned in there, as well as separately. Moving on to the violence and aggression incidents that we deal with. We had 28 last year, which is a reduction from the previous year. There's been a notable reduction of incidents in Exmouth and Exmouth Town Hall. We do believe that's because of the introduction of the security guard there, which has helped resolve that to an extent. And that's an ongoing piece of work that we are keeping under review, but it looks to have had a real significant impact in that area. The other thing that we should mention as well is we have, because of it is a significant risk to a number of our officers, we have a lone worker app, which is a phone-based system where people can record where they are and obviously flag any emergencies if they happen. And now we give a table there for where it sets out the number of usages, which I can see is quite significant. What we have found, though, is that this system is a little bit outdated, and we are looking to procure a new, more user-friendly system at the moment, and we're going through that process at the moment. But as you see, quite a significant usage that we have on that one. Going on to item 3, we have training. There's a list there of the various pieces of training, table 5, that we've undertaken this year for various different officers. This is on top of the mandatory training that's offered through HR, the online work, and in addition to that, we've also reviewed some of the induction processes, the welcome morning presentation, although we're doing a bit more around that, and some other piece of work. One notable one there is we're actually training the 2 health and safety officers in undertaking some work around fire safety that will enable us to do work internally that we don't have to send out to an external contractor, potentially saving us some money as well. To item 4, we've talked about general work and auditing, giving a list of all the various workplaces that we have and that we regularly will go around and check. We have a standard format that we use for those, and anything that we pick up feedback to the local line managers. We've outlined a summary of general work below that table, item 4 and table 5. And I thought, well, rather than going through every single one, I'm very happy to answer any questions from councillors afterwards, but I thought I'd pick out a couple of interesting ones out there. One is, obviously, we've where we've had the issues down in Exmouth with the sewage issues in South West Water. Our health and safety officers have been down there regularly to make sure that they're compliant with the health and safety requirements, and they've done a lot of really good work down there, making sure that the risk of lorries and residents don't come to any significant harm. The other one that's interesting that we'll pick out is the hand-arm vibration work that we've done. So we've been doing various tests with the guys in street scene to make sure that they're safe from these pieces of kit. So where they're actually vibrating it through usage, it can end up with longer-term health issues around their arms and hands. And what we've done is we've invested in a piece of equipment that allows us to carry out that testing ourselves. So with that initial investment, we've actually been able to save a significant amount of money doing that ongoing monitoring, and we're potentially looking at to extend that out to other authorities. Moving on, policies and reports. This is an ongoing piece of work, and if you notice from the work plan that we have going forwards, it's a really significant piece of the work that we need to do in this financial year. So we did a bit last year, with particularly the driving at work policy, which we picked up, and we've also looked at the Blackdown House next to the Town Hall fire procedures, as I'm sure most of you remember from the last council meeting, I think, well, one of the recent council meetings about the evacuation. So we've done a fair bit of work around that. We've picked up some matters of ongoing concern as well in item number 6. The big piece of work for us at the moment is we're going through a procurement exercise for a new corporate health and safety system. Up until certainly when I started, we were using really outdated ways of recording our health and safety. This makes management very difficult. It's very hard to keep on top of who's done what training, what risk tests have been carried out, make sure the policies are kept up together. It's not really fit for purpose with where we are these days. So we're going through a procurement exercise through Strata to make sure that we have a system that actually reflects where we are in the current time, will help us in terms of delivering our health and safety requirements. That's been ongoing for some time. It is come towards the end now, In fact, we have a meeting at the end of this week just to finalise our arrangement with Strata, so we're hopeful that will be implemented this financial year. It will have an impact on the team because obviously it's one thing buying the system, you actually have to implement it, and that takes time. So there's probably going to be an element of backfill in order to allow project management of that implementation, but that should really help us deliver going forwards. So we're really keen to get that sorted out. I've mentioned the new lone worker system as well. One little aside to that one is the 2G and 3G network is being switched off at the end of this month, which has a knock-on effect to some of our systems, and we've had to take some sort of urgent action to cover the gap between the new lone worker system coming in and the end of this period. So we've taken some action to actually purchase some individual lone worker devices to keep us going in that period, and make sure that our staff are kept safe when they're carrying out high-risk lone worker visits. Other than that, we're doing some work with Place and Assets around fire risk assessments. We've done some work around sewerage systems that we use, and also, sorry, that we have within our organisation. And also, we've just confirmed that where SWAST have pulled out from still backing up the defibrillators, we've picked that up now to make sure that we continue delivering, offering that service, for want of a better phrase, going forwards. Moving forwards, what we've done is over the last couple of years, we've provided an action plan. Now, I've provided that as Appendix 1 in the report. It's a lot of information. I don't intend to go through it line by line, and I'm very, very happy to answer any questions on any specific items that people have any ideas or would like to discuss. What I would say is that was the original plan, so that was the start of the year before any real work has been carried out. Since then, we have been keeping it under review, and I can update anybody who has any particular issues or concerns with that action plan going forwards. But as you can see, the key areas for us to take forward this year is making sure our policies and procedures are effective and updated, developing that health and safety culture. I think the new system is going to be significant help to that. Securing competence of our employees, and measuring performance and carrying out performance review. So I think it's fair to say that it's been a time of a lot of change within the corporate safety team. We've had to take on a lot of sort of wider tactical approach to health and safety whilst delivering on some of the operational issues that have come up over time. And I think we're still going through that process. We know that there's quite a lot of work to do, particularly around the policies and procedures, and that's kind of our focus at the moment, if you like, once we get the new system in place. But I think we're heading generally in the right direction. So very, very happy, Chair, if you've got any questions that I can assist with.
Thank you very much, Matt. And I just wanted to thank all the officers who are using the report tools to report near misses and taking time out of their day to do that, because I'm sure that helps Matt and his team better shape policies and prevent things that could be far worse in the future. So questions for Matt. I know Councillor Levine wants to come in. Oh, I might start outside committee actually first then. So Councillor Barlow, you're up first.
Thank you very much, Chair. Obviously, great report. A little bit concerning that obviously, and this is what I want to get to, is it that we are reporting more things, or should we be concerned? I can see that street scenes doubled, and I understand that they would have accidents. What's more concerning is the huge rise in finance, which is not an area where you would expect trips and falls and accidents, but I presume this is the verbal abuse and things like that. And again, it's not really an accident. I know you've got to put it somewhere. I just wonder if that should be separated out. Yeah, and I'm just concerned that the public hasn't reported anymore. We've gone from 23 to 27. So are we again getting people to report things that we wouldn't have done normally because they're not really reportable incidents? Can you explain why it suddenly jumped, and should we be concerned? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. So Matt, is it are they linked to other reported near misses or reported incidents? Do we have without obviously getting too specific and not identifying people?
It's always difficult to say for definite. We do honestly think that by raising awareness and making sure that the health and safety offer is more apparent, it makes you get more incidents reported, and we do encourage an openness to reporting. So I think that's a significant part of it. And certainly the work that we've done down in street scene would suggest that we've improved that sort of culture of openness and making sure things are reported. The finance one is an interesting one. I think you're right. I think it probably is people being aggressive and assertive. I know I've had to get involved with one particular incident where a member of staff was receiving very unpleasant emails from a member of the public, and we have to put measures in place to deal with that. So yes, I think there's probably an unfortunate level of crossover with the violent incidents. So there's probably some that are reported through the accident reporting procedure that should be reported through the violent. Ultimately, we don't mind as long as we get it, as long as we get access. So if we were to take those out and put them into the violent and aggressive incident reporting, they'd still be down in numbers, and also the accidents would be down. So I think we have to be a little bit careful about looking for any particular trends from that point of view. It is noticeable they have gone up significantly, but what I would also say is that we always follow up anything of significance as well. So we do look at whether or not there are any learning opportunities, anything that we need to amend, whether the risk assessments are adequate, whether something's been missed, to make sure that we don't have the same incident going forwards. And even though we're looking at 4 reportable incidents this year, when you look at them, they are technically reportable. When you actually look at the incidents that led up to that, there's nothing really we could have done differently of significance that would have made a difference.
I suspect that some types of incident are linked to stresses growing in society as well. I mean, for example, the housing team seem to be experiencing more than their fair share at the moment. So it could be the wider context coming to bear as well. Councillor Barlow.
I'm just going to say, accidents do happen. And there's a thing, isn't it? Some things you can't do anything about, and we just need to accept that. But I sometimes worry that you know, if you ask people too much, have you had an accident, keep going, that you actually start, it becomes its own problem, and then we become even more risk averse. But I understand it's a very important job, and well done for doing it. Thank you.
I think as an organisation, we want to avoid people coming a cropper at work generally, and I think that's a good thing. Right, okay, next, I don't see that Councillor Collins wants to come in, so I'm going to go to Councillor Levine now, please.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you, Matt, for a really good report. You may have a slice of cake now. And secondly, two newbie questions. On table 1, you report 6 accidents in finance. I just wonder what they were. The only thing I can imagine is somebody's getting their fingers stuck in a pencil sharpener or falling over backwards when they see the figures. And on table 5, on the workplace inspections, there are a lot of inspections that were carried out at the beginning of the year, and then it says due again in April, May, etc., etc. Have they taken place, or are they just waiting for something to happen? Thank you.
Councillor Levine has preempted one of my questions. I suspect that the report was finalised probably in the summer, wasn't it? But I think Matt's about to answer your questions. I think one of them was potentially answered in Councillor Barlow's line of questioning as well, about the finance incidents.
Yeah, I believe so. I'd have to go into more detail. I don't have that specific information with you, but from my understanding, the vast majority would be around aggressive incidents, people being abusive, because obviously we have council tax benefits, that sort of thing, and that can sometimes cause high emotions. So I believe that's probably where they come from, but I'd have to check for you.
These be incidents rather than accidents?
I suppose, yeah, I mean, we can argue that one, and ultimately our main focus is trying to encourage people to report those sort of things so we can take action. So you may well be right, but putting that to one side about the language, we do try to have that open culture to try and make sure that people do feel able to report things and to be treated, you know, with respect and confidence that something will happen. I'm not going to pretend we do always achieve that, but that's what we try to achieve. Sorry, just picking up on your second one about schedule. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Chair. Obviously, because of the timings of the report, it was for the previous year. So it identified those that we've already done in that previous year. Just to give you a little brief summary, if you look at the Appendix 2, which is the first quarter's report, you can see there it does give an outline in item 6, some of the further audits that we've carried out since. So, for instance, Camperdown was 9th of June, Manston Depot 27th of June, that sort of thing. So there are, it's an ongoing piece of work, and it's that difference between the reactive work that you do in response to an accident or an incident versus the proactive work that we book in and do on a regular basis. So it's marrying the two up. But yeah, it's because it was of the time the report was written.
Thank you very much, Matt. Any more questions, Yehudi, or are you done? Okay, right. Councillor Dumper, please. Tim.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, thank you very much it's a very comprehensive report. Thanks for that. Councillor Eileen Wragg and I were discussing on the way in the fact that councillors themselves and what they are involved in are not referenced very much. I noticed one reference in regard to an accident last year, and we thought that it might be a good idea if there were a little bit more done on that. I mean, apart from anything else, many of the things that we deal with are done on a loan basis. So, I mean, we are analogous to loan workers, if you like. Just asking for your comment on that, really. One other thing, just to come back to Yehudi's point, we have discussed this issue of finance before. It's come up in our previous committees here. And when this has happened before, it has mainly been down to the fact that car parks were transferred in. And of course, car parks are outside working and are much more prone to accidents than inside. I may be wrong, but I think that's a likely explanation.
As Matt said as well, it could be that it is also part of the revenues and benefits team experiencing acts of aggression. So it's difficult to tell with 6 incidents, and also it probably wouldn't be desirable to break those down by incident because it would be identifying. So there's not much we can, I mean, it's a relatively small number of incidents. And obviously it's a huge growth because it went from 0 to 6, but objectively 6 is not a huge number of incidents given all the structural changes that have happened. And then that's not to minimise any of them, but it obviously looks like a huge increase because it is objectively, but it's not in numbers, if you see what I mean. I'll get there.
I was just going to say, car park wardens, of course, also experience a lot of abuse in their work as well. So.
Yeah, so there's potential in all the operational areas for daily exposure to threat. Obviously, that's why a lot of the incidents appear in the more operational side of what we do. And we could probably expect that to rise given the other structural changes that are coming in. But it's worth for committee to note that all types of incident are gathered together for the overall incidents, including near misses and including acts of non-physical damage and including damage to property. So it's not, if you have to drill down into the categories to work out how serious they are or could have been. So obviously there is a rise, but potentially partly due to what's happening in the wider society and partly due to structural changes. Tim, have you finished?
Well, just, I'm sure Matt wants to comment on the councillor issue.
Yes, sorry, Matt.
Thank you. Yeah, just picking up on that then, and it'd be interesting because obviously car parks is moving again into a different, so it'd be interesting to see whether numbers go down from finance after that. So yeah, I mean, but in some ways, that's exactly the sort of question that illustrates the problems that we have at the moment with the current system because it isn't nicely joined up. So getting that data is really quite hard. It's difficult to get it and then to actually manipulate it. The new system will allow us to do that. So have everything in one place. We can pull in exactly what's happening and where and all the rest of it. So it hopefully will have a better set of data for you in due course. So we're doing the best we can with what we've got at the minute. But yeah, I think that's an interesting thing to look out for about the car parks and seeing whether that the risk transfers across to the new service. Coming back to your point around councillors, it's an interesting one, councillors, because even though you are so fundamentally part of the council, you're not employees. Yes, indeed. So it makes it interesting in terms of health and safety responsibility. I think the general view of everywhere I've everywhere I've worked so far is we'll do whatever we can to support you in doing what you're doing. I always remember there's a huge amount of conversation in the past around sort of going out and delivering flyers for your various political parties and putting fingers through letterboxes and giving advice about how to avoid getting your fingers bitten off by the dog, that sort of thing. But it is very much advice, and it's something we would work with Dem Services on in terms of supporting you with any health and safety requirements that sort of fit with yourselves. As an organisation, as an employing organisation, we have responsibilities to make sure that the work activities of the organisation don't put your safety at risk. The challenge, shall we say, is that obviously it's so integrated into the process, sometimes it's difficult to see where one starts and the other stops. So I'm not going to pretend it's a really easy answer to give you, but it's making sure that we work together to give you the information and knowledge that you need. And I don't think it's a bad idea either to pick out any particular issues around member safety going forwards in terms of the report. So I'll look to make sure we add that in due course.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. So I think obviously as pressures in the greater society rise, and so our risks rise as well. But that is what we're trying to manage and manage better. And spatulas, your friend. Anybody who's out leafleting, job lot of spatulas. I lost one once to a dog, and it proved its worth. Happy dog. Right, Councillor Hayward, please. You are up next.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Well, when the time comes, I'm happy to propose that the recommendations as listed. Just going back to Councillor Levine's point, I'm a sedentary finance worker in my place of work, and I had an accident because I stabbed myself with a knife in the kitchen. Still a workplace incident, still has to be recorded because it's an accident, it was an incident, and it could turn septic. I don't douse it in TCP. So even minor things have to be reported. In terms of, and these are just observations, in Table 3 training, it's telling that the course that required or had the most number of attendees is conflict and de-escalation. And that ties in with the issue in the previous table that I think we need to pay tribute to our officers and colleagues in the housing team who have had 80% of all the incidents directed at them. It is an unenviable job. We know the challenges with housing, but that's no reason for those officers to be belittled, attacked or harassed or threatened. So our thanks to go to them. Lone worker, it's a challenge. And again, you have to find a balance with health and safety, but I'm afraid this is, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. A lot of clerks, a lot of councils have lone workers. My own team are often criticised because they go out in a pair, but they're using heavy equipment, they're using cutting tools almost on a daily basis. And occasionally one of them is on leave. So that means I have to send someone out doing that work to remote parts of my parish. And so it's important that we look after lone workers because we need to know where they are, what they're doing, and whether they are office-based, going out and meeting the public, or street scene team, or operatives using equipment. It's dangerous. And if you have an accident and you can't get to your phone, it can be incredibly serious, if not life-threatening. And the final one, and I think Matt's covered this, is when you look at the 2024-25 RIDDOR reported accidents, there's 4. Which is an increase on the previous year, but it should be noted, I think Matt covered this, that actually 3 of those are only reported because there was an absence of more than 7 days. It's not the severity of the actual injury, although that's not taking it away that I'm sure they were, very painful for the operatives concerned, but it was more than 7 days absence. So that's the nature of the reporting. And obviously the operative who slipped and fell, as Councillor Barlow said, it does happen. And the person broke his right shin, which I'm sure was incredibly painful and required, a convalescence period and something. But it does happen, but that's why we report it, because then we have stats to follow it up. So I'm very grateful, as others are, for the comprehensive nature and the thoroughness of this report. It shows we're doing what we need to do, looking after our staff. And yes, Councillor Dunbar's right, there are 60 councillors out and about, but this is staff. This is staff, and we can report what we need to report, and we look after each other. But I'm very grateful, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Hayward. There weren't really any questions in there, so I'm going to move on to the next person, who is councillor Ragg, please.
Thank you, Chair. This building, is this building being assessed for any, shall we say, I don't know, faults, is all I can say. I've become acutely aware, since I've had the mobility problem, I wasn't before, of things which could be improved greatly. For instance, door openings. You try and open a door when you're pushing one of those things, you know, and especially if you've got to get out quickly. Now, I know that all these things were addressed by the working group that looked into the design of this building before it was ever erected, and they were all dismissed. Things right down to energy saving, yeah, everything, and dismissed out of hand because of cost. Well, I had an accident here a few weeks ago, planning, during a planning meeting. I came back after lunch to do some work, and I went to get on the dais. I was chairing the meeting that day. I left my walker on the ground there because it's difficult to, I didn't need to. I thought I'd grab the table. I grabbed the table. I didn't realise the table had wheels. It went flying off the dais. I went down very heavily, and you know, it's not, I'm not looking for a sympathy vote or anything like that. I'm just pointing out the hazards, a simple hazard. The brakes weren't on the wheels on the table. If that could be checked before every meeting, things like this wouldn't happen. As it was, having had major complex reconstructive surgery last year, you know, things could have turned out very differently. I did say to Andrew Lewis, explained it to him. There were only 2 members, council members in the chamber at the time, and it took 2 of them to get me up on my feet again. I did say to Andrew, I explained to him about that, is there an accident book? He said, well, there is, and he said Matt Blythe was the officer concerned to report it to. Well, I didn't report it because I thought that Andrew was going to, I assumed from what he was saying at the time that he was going to report it. But it's things like that. Could an accident book be left perhaps in the chamber? But overall, you know, it's the accesses, getting it in and out of the building. And again, during the fire drill, could people with disabilities, and I know there's at least one other, I'm hoping this one's temporary with me, but it has certainly increased my awareness. Could a buddy be appointed to councillors, members with this? I know everything's focused on clients, visitors and staff here. And I know we're not considered employees, but we do pay income tax, and we do pay, those of us who are of a certain age, national insurance. So that it's a bit of an anomalous situation, really. We're neither one thing or the other, and yet we're both. And what we're paid is allowances, but I know that's going off the subject, but it's drawing the distinction between employees, employers and councillors.
I think at the end of the day, if one of us has an accident on these premises, then it has to be recorded in some form, because we are humans, no matter what our status.
Yeah, but could
and
we
so we need a system for doing this, don't we?
We do need a system to address it, and also a buddy to make sure we get out of the building. If we can't open doors to get out, you know, we need somebody to do it for us, or if somebody, you know, with maybe a visual impairment, we'll need somebody to guide them out, particularly if there's smoke in the building. So it's things like that. And also, loan working has been mentioned. I know, you know, I mean, this is, you couldn't have predicted this. A chap came to my door once. He was known to have a long, very long grievance against certain officers of this council and against council as a whole. And he appeared on my doorstep at once, threatening to set himself alight. Things like that. I was stalked at one time by
Okay,
a woman.
okay.
Things like that. That's something that, you know, is beyond
I hear what you're
can
saying,
be-
Councillor
what
Wragg.
can be catered for here, but those are the sorts of things. Another, I had a meeting, this is relevant. I had a meeting once at the request of a resident, one of my constituents. I met her at Exmouth Town Hall in a little room, an interviewing room, and she seemed perfectly rational. It became obvious as time went on that she was paranoid schizophrenic. And I was shut in this little room with her, and there were no windows and no means of calling somebody if I needed help. Fortunately, it didn't come to that. But that there are these instances, they might seem isolated, but I'm sure most of us experience something of this nature, in the course of our, well, it depends how long you work. Can happen any time, I suppose, doesn't matter how many years you've been a councillor. But it's all these things, some can't be risk assessed, but some can be, and I think with particular regard to this building, there are things that do need serious looking at. So
I'm quite,
I know you'll take that on.
I'm quite certain that Matt's been listening very
I'm sure he
closely to
will.
everything you've said, and I know that with a councillor body, forgive me, of a
Thank you.
slightly higher than average age, and also an employee body within this building of a slightly higher than average age, then a lot of these things do need to be considered. We are likely to have a higher percentage of people with a disability as well. And I'm sure Matt's been listening very carefully to what you said. And I think some of our corporate policies almost certainly do already encompass us, but it's probably not necessarily obvious what an individual councillor must do if they have an incident of this type. So maybe that is one of the learning points for the organisation. I'm going to go to Matt, and I know that Mel wants to come in after Matt.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really sorry to hear that you had an accident. That is not good. I don't know if that was reported by Andrew. I'll go and check. It should have been reported. So we've moved away from the sort of the accident book model that used to happen, but we do make sure the report. So I will check what's going on there and follow that up. You're absolutely right. Obviously, tables should be locked in place. And that's maybe something that we just need to add in as a check going forwards, just to make sure it's the case. So thank you for the feedback on that. If there are specific issues that cause you particular problems around mobility, then let us know and we can pick that up, or we can go back through our assets team and see if there's anything we can do around that one. We do regular checks of the building. Obviously, they're sort of generic. They're not looking at specific items beyond sort of our fire safety measures in place. Are there any carpets going, that sort of thing? So if there are specifics, let us know. We can follow that up. You mentioned about the issues around evacuation. Now, very recently we did quite a lot of work about doing these personal evacuation plans. I was under the impression that we had actually completed those from what you're saying. That was not the case, because obviously I know yourself and one of the member has mobility issues that we need consideration in the event of an evacuation. So I'll pick that up with Andrew again, because I was under the impression that we'd sorted those now. So if that's not the case, I'm sorry about that. Regarding the incident in the room, this is one of these ones that again becomes problematic in terms of the councillor's position as a non-employee. So from a legal point of view, my initial reading of what you said is if you chose to be in a room with a member of the public and you set it up, then you would need to risk assess that yourself. But on the flip side of that is, if you were able to go and say to a member of the team, look, I'm having this meeting with a member of the public, can you, I can't remember what's in the place within ETH, but certainly you could say, can you come and check on me in 10 minutes, or can you, whatever it might be, you can actually assess the situation yourself and ask for some support around that, which I'm sure we'd always be able to do. But I don't know if there's anything there from your point of view, might you like pick up in terms of member safety?
Yeah,
Mel, yeah.
I was just going to add, so we regularly put guidance out into the members' newsletter in terms of when you're out and about and how to protect yourself and what to do if an incident occurs, which effectively is report it to the police, but also report it to me, and I can report it to the police for you. So absolutely, we're doing that. In addition, we've got a members' briefing, is it today? With the police coming in for Operation Ford. So that's all around member safety. So we will continue to do that. So there's some really good LGA guidance on how you try and keep yourself safe. And we will continue promoting that. But absolutely, if you have any concerns, any issues with stalking, people being aggressive to you, please do report it through to me. So that was on that. In terms of the personal evacuation plans, Matt's absolutely right. We've been working on those and ensuring that those members who need support have it. So when we had the recent fire drill go off in a council meeting, those members had somebody to take them out of the building. So that's really important. And obviously, if there are any members that we don't know that has any sort of disability or access issue, then they need to make us aware. Obviously, we rely on information that we know. So if people do feel they need support, then please do let us know.
Yes, I think it was a very useful learning tool, that evacuation procedure at full council in July. But I suppose we also have to bear in mind that not only are there people who are already disabled when they reach the chamber, but people may stumble or have a minor accident on their way out of the chamber as well. So we need to make sure that we have enough people who are able to accompany. Right, next up we have Councillor Barlow. And
Thank you,
Councillor
Chair.
Hayward.
I don't want to prolong this any longer, but I also believe that people need to take responsibility for themselves as well. And much as I accept of things like the wheels on the table, etc., I do think that we live in a time where everything is blamed on someone else, rather than actually saying, I made a mistake. It's almost because it's embarrassing when these things happen. So I don't want to stress it. I don't want it to go on any longer, but I do think we need to just be aware that the more you start these things, it takes money, it takes time, and then we're going to check the tables are locked and all the rest of it. Whereas we all know those tables move because we've seen it so many times they're coming over the edge. But again, these are all, and I don't want to stress this, but I just
Thank you, Councillor Barlow, for your thought for the day. Right, Councillor Hayward, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the point that Melanie raised about Operation Ford, I know there's a member learning session today. I'll try and attend that. My own experience of it is that it's well meant, but DCP, Devon and Cornwall Police, are hugely under-resourced, and my own experience of it as a councillor and as a candidate, as an officer, is that you can report, but not much is done. And I'm sorry to report that. It's well meant, and I've had chats with the local rural inspector in East Devon and expressed the same to him. They mean well, but they just can't do anything about it. And that's, this is a personnel committee, but we've raised about councillors and candidates and those who have dual roles. And I just don't think it works. Because even if you report it, unless you have been physically assaulted, and threats are just as distressing to officers and councillors alike, but they can't do anything about threats. That's the problem. A threat is just an ephemeral thing. It may or may not happen. And yet, as Councillor Ragg says, you don't know it's going to happen until it's happened. And at that point, it's too late. And unfortunately, the world society has become a less tolerant, more violent, more aggressive place. And that's having an impact on officers and councillors alike. So I hope that DCP and every police force does take this seriously, because democracy is at stake. And the work of council officers is made harder by the way things are. So again, I'd like it, not like it noted, I just hope that something can be done and actions can be put behind their words, because otherwise it just doesn't mean anything. Thank you.
I'm sure we all hear what you're saying, Councillor Hayward. It is regrettable that in society now we are seen to be fair game when people feel frustration, because we are just ordinary people as well, just trying to shape services. So it is regrettable that people feel that they can take frustration out on us, sometimes in violent ways. Okay, next up we have, Councillor Loudon, please.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps I can try and pull this to a conclusion. Councillor Hayward has kindly offered to propose the recommendations. I'm happy to second them, and I just wanted to thank Matt for the report. It's interesting. I think this is the first health and safety report that this committee has received, and I can't remember when the last time that members received a health and safety report in any committee. It's may have been scrutiny before this committee was set up, which was, no, not even then. Right. And I think that demonstrates the importance that the management team here have focused on the health and safety of and welfare of employees. And I think that's commendable. All too often, health and safety is one of those things in life where it's easy to ridicule. And frankly, if you have had an accident that is avoided because of something that has been done through the health and safety processes, then you will be extremely grateful. So I think it's important, and I was pleased with the level of engagement that's gone on in this committee this morning around this. My biggest fear would be poor old Matt would come in, put the effort into writing and delivering the report, and he'd be out within a couple of minutes. So I'm genuinely pleased at the level of engagement that's come back around this. I think one of the key things that Matt highlighted was that there is an encouragement to have an open culture amongst the staff about reporting issues, whether it be a small issue, maybe inconsequential in their mind, but it's important that it is at least reported, and then it can be evaluated, and if necessary, action taken. And it allows, it's a bit like, isn't it? The police always say, you know, always report something, even if it's so minor you don't think it's that important, because there may be somebody else who has gone through the same issue. So it's important that we encourage and support the open culture and reporting, as Matt's talked about. And I'm pleased, I've heard for many a month now, Matt's trials and tribulations about getting the new system, health and safety system, up and running and in. I will be very pleased for him and his colleagues when it does finally come online. We can then make much better sense of the data that employees are encouraged to feed in. So, in conclusion, the penultimate comments made previously by Councillor Hayward, I absolutely concur with the whole sentiment of what he said. So, Chair, with that, I'd be happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. We have a proposer and a seconder, and I just wanted to say, you have a question for Matt, and also
Just
just quickly,
it's a general
please.
question. Is there a queries or a complaint box for staff? I'm asking this because I know that staff are going home, leaving early because it's too cold to work in this building. Not just in this chamber, we've had problems with the air conditioning, I know. But it's in the offices as well. And I did say to a member of staff, senior member of staff, is it okay if I raise these concerns? She said, please do. So I'm just raising that and asking, is there a complaints box where, you know, because people are sometimes reticent to complain because they think they're troublemaking.
Okay.
So I think
So we need a
something
reporting
like that,
system.
a grumble box.
Reporting system for concerns, and specifically, it sounds like the working temperature environment at the moment. Councillor Dumper, please, just quickly.
Yes, sorry, yeah, I did put my hand up some while ago, actually. Yeah.
Go, please, speak.
What I was going to say, I hope this is helpful. Relating back to Councillor Ragg's interview experience and the being in a one-to-one situation. To my knowledge, currently, the one-to-one interview rooms that we have with staff actually are fitted with panic buttons, which you can use. Eileen did exactly the right thing to book one of those rooms to talk to somebody one-to-one about. But she should have been shown, if there was a panic button, how to operate that and make sure that
Yeah, it wasn't
she was
here.
safe.
It wasn't
At,
here.
at Exmouth Town Hall, I'm talking
Okay.
about as well.
Right, thank
They
you very
are.
much, Councillor Dumper. I think probably what the vibes that Matt is getting from this meeting is that we're all very interested in health and safety. People rightly have the right to expect to come to work and not have an avoidable accident, and that councillors probably, it should be extended to councillors as well, that attitude of being able to be here without necessarily expecting something bad to happen. So I'm sure Matt's heard all of our concerns. Oh, come back, Matt, please.
Yeah, sorry, just to pick up on the coal building, that is something that has been flagged. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a difficult one because the temperature within this building is perfectly acceptable from a health and safety point of view. It doesn't mean to say it's perfectly acceptable from an individual's comfort point of view. As we know, different people have different temperature requirements. And that's, that is a bit of an issue because it's very hard to please everybody, and it's a centralised temperature system. The way that the climate control works, and I'm no expert on this, but from what I understand, it's a case of you get what you're given to an extent, which isn't a particularly satisfying answer, but that's a reality. So it certainly is well within what would be deemed acceptable from the guidance that we have around temperature, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's nice for everyone, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Thanks, thank you, Matt.
Sorry, the wider point there as well is obviously anything can be reported. We have a generic health and safety inbox. We have the reporting system, so anything like that could be picked up.
Right, so if I can be appraised, I can circulate the generic inbox details to all members, please.
Yeah.
And bearing in mind what Mel has also said about these things also being in the newsletter, which comes out weekly, doesn't it? So if you have a concern about health and safety, by all means do report it. Right, I really would like to wrap this up now because we've been on it for quite a long time, and I think it shows the depth of feeling among members for the issues raised. And thank you for your ongoing work. And thank you also to all the team members who report near misses and take the time to do that, because that can help avoid something worse in the future. Right, I'm now going to put this to, it's not really a vote because it's for noting, isn't it? It's proposed and seconded. If everybody's happy to note this, would you please raise your hand now? Thank you very much. I think that's unanimous. Right, moving on to agenda item 8, which is, we have made Gemma wait for an awfully long time now. The annual people data report for 24-25. Gemma, please take us away on this.
Okay, sorry, figure out the microphone. Morning, everyone. So we do have, as Matt explained, with the health and safety data, this is the annual data for 24-25, but we do also have the next item is up-to-date data for April to July. So I'm just going to cover the main points for the annual data as provided in the covering report. So headcount at this time was at 557, and this did represent an increase of 1.08%, which is 6 FTE. The largest proportion of our workforce was paid at grade 4, and the largest directorate is now place, which is representing 44.34% of our workforce. Salary costs have increased by 10.56% compared to the previous year, where it was 14.8%. And this increase is due to the headcount increase, also the pay award, which is negotiated nationally. And in addition, it can be attributed to the additional director posts, given the place directorate, and also the increase of those paid at grade 6. So we have seen an increase of 6 people paid at grade 6 in this reporting period. In relation to market supplements, these have increased from 11 to 21. In part, this increase is attributed to market supplement application to support the recruitment and retention of surveyors in housing. And we are very mindful and conscious of this increase, and we monitor the applications for market supplements. An annual review is also done for market supplements, and that is assessed by the executive leadership team. And where there is no longer evidence to support the application of a market supplement, they would be removed as part of that annual review. What the level of market supplements does demonstrate is the ongoing pressure for certain professions and the recruitment difficulties there, such as solicitors and surveyors, as mentioned. And the LGA do report that currently 96% of councils in England are experiencing recruitment difficulties. In relation to travel expenses, these have reduced for the 4th year running, and we have seen an increase in recruitment advertising costs from 1,368 to 2,232 per head in this reporting period. However, this is likely due to executive recruitment of the chief exec and also 2 director posts in that year. We continue to benchmark well with the CIPD, who suggest the average cost is between 3 to 5k. Vacancy rates, these remain similar, ending at 6.82% of headcount at the end of the reporting period. And we have made changes to the reporting in this area, which you'll see reflected in the updated data, and I will cover in the next item. Turnover has increased from 11.25% to 13.8%. LGA benchmark is 13.5%. Learning and development, so these numbers, we have seen an increase in attendance, which is great, from 483 to 508. Apprenticeships continue to be a great news story for the council, and numbers have grown by 90.9% since 22-23, and from 17 to 21 over this reporting period. For the first year, we have not lost any of our levy, which is what funds our apprenticeships, and LGA research suggests that councils are spending around 40 to 60% of their levy, so it's great to see that we are utilising as much of that as possible to support and grow our staff. In relation to absence, we have seen a slight increase from 10.5 days to 10.24 days lost per FTE. We have seen a reduction in long-term absence in that period, but an increase, therefore, in short and medium term. Benchmarking data, which is available up to the end of 24, shows that the average among other neighbouring authorities is 10.59 days. However, local government workforce data, which covers a much diverse range of organisations, shows an average of 8.8 days lost. In terms of our workforce profile, which was mentioned earlier in terms of age, we are now at 49 as our average age, which is a slight increase, and 3.24% of our workforce recorded they have an ethnic group other than white UK, which is an increase from last year's 1.6%. Employees reporting a disability remains consistent, and we continue to have a higher percentage of females than males within the workforce. So in summary, the data is showing that we're performing well against benchmarks. Notable positives include the decrease in travel. This is both in relation to cost and supporting our climate change strategy, learning and development, engagement and apprenticeships. Absence continues to be an area which requires further consideration, and we need to closely monitor the use of market supplements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Gemma. Worth noting the size of the house and housing team in relation to the previous item as well. So obviously more people means more potential problems. Councillor Barlow, straight in there.
Thank you very much, Chair. A few questions, please. How many posts are paid by the HRA that aren't included in these figures? Can you explain if our staffing has only gone up by 1% and yet we've had a 10.5% increase in the salary costs?
Is that a question, Councillor Barlow?
That is a question, but I am carrying on because I've got a few others.
Are you in the
here.
middle of the question?
I'm just trying to read the next one because my writing isn't very good. And again, the travelling, so why is travelling dropped? I couldn't quite understand. Obviously, people don't get paid if they're working at home to travel from home. They get paid from when they travel to their workplace, because I was reading later on in the thing, and then out from there. So are we visiting less people now, or what is the reason for that? And that's the start of it. Thank you.
3 questions, therefore, isn't it? So what was the first one? Sorry, I didn't quite catch it.
What was the first
Where
one?
was something to do with where salaries were coming from?
Well, sorry, yes, it says how many, it says, sorry, in your thing on page 38, posts which are paid from housing revenue account are excluded from these figures. My understanding was the HRA has about 11 million on cost to deliver, which I presume was mainly staff, and I was just wondering how many posts are included in that that aren't included in our figures here.
Okay, page 38. Right. Oh, I've got a gap here. Gemma, are you happy to take those 3 questions? Thank you.
Yeah. So in terms of the HRA, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I can find out what that looks like in terms of, as you say, the HRA does fund a number of staff where it's linked to that activity. And so I can go away and find that out. In terms of the increase in pay, I think you're questioning the how much we've increased by headcount versus the increase in pay. So that is because some of those roles that I talked about, so for example, the additional director, that's an existing member of staff that's moved into that role, so not an increase in headcount. Also, the pay award would be all for existing staff, and also potentially some of those that have moved to grade 6 would have been existing staff already. Does that answer that question?
People get promoted.
Yes.
I just think it's interesting the amount the money has gone up, whereas our staff hasn't. So in other words, we've taken on very few extra staff, but we have had quite a large, because I don't know what the pay scheme was, but it wasn't certainly 10% or anywhere near it. So obviously we are paying our people more, not just an increase in their wages. So they have, as you say, jumped up a step or whatever, which is great for our staff. But again, we're not having any more staff, we're having a large increase. So that was just that.
And there was a third question, wasn't there? Yeah.
And then on travel costs, so I believe this is attributed to that people are delivering services in a different way. Also, there was some clarification provided in terms of, as you talk about the way in which you can claim your travel, so that may have seen a slight reduction in how people were claiming that attributes to the reduction.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gemma, and thank you, Councillor Barlow. Councillor Hayward, please, Paul.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. Under 2.7, just for some clarity, you've got recruitment advertising costs have increased from 1368 per head to 2232 per head, increased, explained by necessity for the executive recruitment. Is that per head of our entire workforce? So what's the difference there is about £900, £850. Is that then extrapolated via the entire head count of the organisation to come up with the number that it's increased by? So that's that question, if I may. We've then got the items under 2.12, days lost, and noting the increase there. The question on 2.13 is obviously 27.94, 28% of our workforce were absent cited stress, anxiety and fatigue. As I mentioned in the previous agenda item, working in local government is a lot harder. Working in all government is a lot harder in the modern era. And just seeking confirmation, and I'm sure it's the case, that we're doing everything we can to support members of staff who are suffering from stress, anxiety and fatigue, because we're all trying to do a lot more with a lot less. Workforce 2.15, workforce profile, those ages, are they're quite high. We've got an older workforce, and I know from seeing adverts that a lot of our recruitment and I don't know how to put this diplomatically, requires sort of graduate level entry. And I'm just wondering, is that necessity as someone, and this isn't the politics of envy, a lot of people don't have university education, and I'm just wondering if we're shutting out people with skills and benefits they could bring to local government because they don't have degrees and they don't have that level of education. I don't. Here I am working in it, and I just hope we're not, stopping people coming into local government, because we could be bringing them in at a younger age. And I know we're doing apprenticeships.
Yeah, I was about to say. I mean,
Then under 2.4, it's just an observation. We're here today, 10th of September, and the report in front of us under 2.4 says the pay award is currently under negotiation. It isn't. This report is a month and a half out of date. It was 24th of July that was announced. So again, it's just, we're seeing information. I appreciate reports take a time to write, but it's not correct. It's not under negotiation. So any member of the public reading this today, that report isn't accurate.
this is the data report for 24-25, Councillor Hayward.
No, the pay award for
pay award,
25-26
okay.
is still under negotiation with the national employers and trade unions. It's not. It's finished. A month and a half ago it was announced. And then the final observation, and this will always be the case because it is always the way, 36% of our employees had no absence, which means that those figures of 10 point such and such, as you said, quite clearly say, relate to the remaining 64% of employees, and with the private sector averaging 5.8 days, there will always be criticism of the public sector that our staff are having more time off. And I think that as long as we have that assurance that we have a process to monitor it, to provide counselling, to provide support, and to bring those figures down. People do get sick, and long-term sickness, obviously if 2 or 3 employees have a very long-term sickness, that tilts the balance, it throws the average right out, and it's not appropriate in this meeting to discuss particular cases, quite obviously, nor even perhaps the number of staff with long-term illnesses, because that's just not appropriate. But it's assurance for us as personnel, assurance for us all councillors and the taxpaying public that we're doing everything we can to get staff back into work so that taxpayers' money provides benefit, because we all know that every member of staff who's off, their workload doesn't disappear. That work has got to be done by someone, and that falls on either their colleagues, it gets put aside, and things get delayed. And we are in a world where the focus on local government is very acute, and that's not to belittle any member of staff who's off. Councillors get sick too. But we just all have to try and do what we can to get staff back in their seats, provide them every assistance we can, provide monitoring, provide any level of support. I suppose that's an observation question. Sorry, Chair, it went off a bit of a
So
tangent.
I'm going to try to pick apart, pick some questions out of what you said. I do want to highlight the work that Gemma, building on the work of Joe before her, has done with apprenticeships to address one of your earlier points about requirements for qualifications, because actually it is possible to join this organisation at a very, very low level and to end up at a very high level through the apprenticeship scheme. And I want to pay tribute to Gemma in the work she's doing in that, because obviously we are spending a significant chunk of the allotted budget on that, which means that it is being used. It is being used to grow our own, literally to grow our own, yeah.
If I may, Chair, entirely concur. It's really positive to see that increase. And apprenticeships are vital, in every organisation. Some organisations aren't big enough to do it. Some don't have the means, some don't have the mechanisms, but we are doing what we can.
We have the will
and it's
and the
really
resources
heartening to
to
see.
do it.
And we've, councillors, we've met the members of staff who have joined on apprenticeship. And it's not just at the very lowest level, there are apprentices
And it's
at
not
every
just
level.
young people either, because
It's
there's
not.
older people who are able to
And
join that
and
apprenticeship
it's
scheme
very,
as well.
very positive. So thank you, Chair, for highlighting that.
The other thing I did want to also highlight before Gemma comes in is our average age is possibly somewhat higher than the private sector. And so that will bring on its own knock-on effects in terms of health, especially as people no longer have a fixed retirement age. they essentially retire when they are too unwell to work or when they want to do something else. And I know that a large part of our voluntary people who've left voluntarily have left because they have retired. So clearly they discovered that they had something better to do than work for East Devon Council. Gemma, I'm going to go over to you now, please.
Okay, okay, so in terms of absence and notes around absence, so we are doing a lot to support our staff, and some of that will come out in some of the agenda items that will follow. We do offer counselling and have an employee assistance programme, and we have policies and processes in place to support staff while they are off, and the HR team do, if you look at our casework figures, we do a lot of work on absence, and that is the sort of highest area that we are supporting in. I think when we come on to the most recent data, that does show again a slight potential for a slight increase by the end of this financial year. So it's definitely something that is on our radar, and as a team we are working to look at where intervention is needed. I would point out that without long-term absence, which as you pointed out, the days lost is 6.22 by FTE, so it does have you know, a impact there in terms of our long-term absence. So how we're managing that is important. So that's in terms of absence. In relation to our workforce profile, and obviously we do have a ageing population anyway here in East Devon, but also that comes in our workforce data as well. So we are looking at, again, as part of the people strategy, which I will talk a bit about in a moment, although recruitment isn't a specific element in that, we are looking as part of that about how we are recruiting and what our outward facing images, you know, what are we putting as required qualifications, and specifically for street scene we're looking to do some work there because we do have definitely an ageing profile there, and we need to look at succession planning. So we're looking at some dedicated resource to support them in how do we attract sort of younger people into that, or not necessarily younger people, but how do we attract people into that area, including younger workforce. Also linked with our sort of grow our own, not just in terms of apprenticeships, but we are working closely with Devon County Council in terms of those of care experience, which I talked about at last Personnel Committee. We've had a session with them 2 weeks ago, and looking at how we engage, again, you know, younger people, but also supporting and in terms of diversifying our workforce. So there is work going on in those areas to look at our ageing workforce. I think the other one was a observation. Was there any other questions? Did I miss any? No, thank you.
You were on a roll. It was hard to separate out the questions by the end. Councillor Levine, Yehudi, please.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just ask you about the vacancy rate, item 2.8, because earlier this year we had an email sent around the street scene telling us that they've got a 33% vacancy rate and are not going to be able to carry out all the work. So we're just wondering, telling us that you've got a 6.82% vacancy rate is brilliant, but is it the same across the whole operation?
Vacancy rates, Gemma, are they significantly higher in some departments than others?
Yes, it's the short answer. Yes, they are. And there was obviously for street scene a particular period that has now reduced, and I believe comms will be coming out to members shortly in relation to that. But yes, it does vary across the organisation where we do have those vacancies. Also in terms of street scene, for example, they do have a seasonal workforce, so that has a impact. They need to increase their workforce during busy periods.
I understand there's also nationwide shortages of certain professions which we need, such as planning. So that is having a knock-on impact on both vacancy rates and also wages, I suspect.
You've taken the words out of my mouth, planning.
Please, do you have another question? Okay, you've given up. Right, next up we have Councillor Loudon, please, John.
So, thank you, Chair. Can I propose the recommendation that we note the content of the report and thank Gemma for this? Just to pick up a few points. Councillor Barlow, I believe the HRA staffing numbers are reported to the HRB. I think that would be my expectation. Regarding the issue of, if you like, you were pointing out that we had a 10% increase in costs versus a 1% increase in numbers, something like that. And there isn't a direct correlation, because you've got to remember that some staff will have annual increments which will skew the percentage on top of the annual pay award. We have gone through I wouldn't say a reorganisation, a retweaking some of the I'm not going to use the Titanic analogy, but some of the deck chairs here have been reorganised, and we had, if you recall, the management structure changes that I think council endorsed last time or the time before, and linked to that within some parts of the organisation, that will have involved a bit of a cascading down of trying to get the right sorts of jobs to deliver the right sorts of services. So that would have come with a cost, and as Gemma said, there was also an issue of the additional director role, and that, just by the very nature it's a higher paid role, will have skewed the figures as well. So I think there's a number of elements within that that I think would come into play. Picking up some of the points that Councillor Haywood raised, there are still a couple of challenges, and I think these are challenges that are shared right across the employment sector of this country. The first is the issue of recruiting and retaining, and it's about recruiting and retaining the best of staff, and that sometimes comes at a challenge. So I think Gemma identified surveyors earlier on. You know, most organisations will look at lawyers, they will look at IT specialists, that, you know, we can add into that planners, etc., etc. And because we're all fishing in the same pond, and we are constrained by national pay negotiations, we're constrained by pay scales, we're constrained by a job evaluation scheme. If I was setting up as JL Inc., I could probably be far more nimble and adaptable at trying to recruit and retain people, because I wouldn't have the same constraints. I may have a bit more money as well, frankly. So that will always continue to be, I think, a challenge for us. And we're doing better than we did in the past. And again, absence for any organisation is probably a bugbear of any manager, because I think they're always being encouraged to look at this and to manage to the best of the ability. Councillor Haywood identified the issue. You just need one or two members of staff in an organisation the size of this who have, unfortunately, long-term underlying health effects, and that can, again, significantly skew the numbers and the percentages. The other thing is, yes, it's about making sure that we support colleagues when they are unwell, but it's also being realistic. I can remember when I'm going to do what some of my colleagues did. I can remember when I was younger, the expectation was, you've got a streaming cold, you've got the flu, whatever. You go into work and you die,
infect everybody else
at your workstation or what have you. Nowadays, if you're in an environment such as this building and you've got that, I would hope the expectation is, hang on, you stay at home until you're not infectious, because you come in and suddenly the whole team can go down.
Yeah.
So it's about finding that right balance,
Especially
between,
since COVID.
you know, not if you like, mollycoddling, as some people would see it, but equally trying to make sure that we look after staff in the right way. And then very finally, just take you to page 30, which is the front piece of the report that Gemma's just talked about. And halfway down that page, I would just draw your attention, if you're eagle-eyed, to the fact that we should congratulate Gemma because she's got a slightly different role now. If you look at that, she's now AD People and Performance.
Oh, yes.
So
I was
it
meant
is
to do that.
the addition of the AD role. So I congratulate her.
I'm going to loop back to something Councillor Barlow said. Yes, people do get promoted. Congratulations to Gemma on her promotion. Right. Okay, so this report is for noting, although Councillor Loudon has proposed it. I'm happy to second it from the chair. It is for noting only, there's nothing to vote on in this. So I wanted to thank Gemma very much for the update, and also thank you, Gemma, for starting to separate out the long-term sickness from the more short-term sickness, because I think they reveal different things. And I think it's very useful to, without identifying people or in any way pointing any fingers of blame, actually working out whether it is long-running health conditions or, you know, the fact that there is stress within a particular department that is causing people to not cope very well with going into work. And also for anybody who may be listening, working from home is working. It is just working from home. So if you do have a cold these days, you actually can carry on powering through, as Councillor Loudon suggests, but without infecting your entire department, which is, in my view, progress. So yes, thank you very much for that report, Gemma. And if you are all happy to note the report, would you please raise your hand now? I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on swiftly, not swiftly as we'd like, but to the people data report, which is back to Gemma, please. And you're going to update us on the workforce data up to July 25. Thank you.
I am, okay. So this is just an updated report for this year up to the end of July. Similar data that we have just spoken about. So headcount at the end of July is 556. Following the annual market supplement review that I mentioned earlier, there was one market supplement removed. However, the total still remains at 21 due to recruitment in relation to surveyors. As previously mentioned, there has been a change in the way that we manage vacancies. So this is having an impact on the data that we're reporting and will mean that it's no longer as easy to compare to previous years. So this change has been put in place to support better alignment of records between HR and finance for budget monitoring purposes. So previously, vacancies were archived on the HR system if there was no authority to recruit form submitted after 6 months of the post being vacant. However, the post would still remain within budget. So to better align and ensure a master record within the HR system, vacant posts now remain on the system until a decision has been made to remove the post from budget. So the change in process accounts for the increase in vacancies numbers from 22 to 66. And at the time of writing the report, there was 32 of those 66 posts that were actively being recruited. Also, given the above, consideration has been given to the way that we report the time it's taken to fill vacancies. And this will now be reported based on the time from the point of active recruitment. This means that we're unable to compare like for like. However, at the end of July, the time taken to fill the vacancies was 559.12 days. Agency workers, there are a total of 27 with an increase of 2 in this reporting period. And agency staff are filling interim for permanent staff that have left and prior to the recruitment of a permanent member of staff. And 18.51% relate to seasonal staff within street scene of those agencies. And as alluded to earlier, in terms of sickness, the current forecast for the end of this financial year, if absence remains at the current rate, would result in 11.42 days lost per FTE, and this would put us above the benchmarking data. So as mentioned, work is currently taking place to look at absence across the organisation and consider where targeted support and intervention can facilitate an improvement in absence. So this data is in year and is not as extensive as the annual data that we've just talked about. However, it does provide valuable insights and support in understanding where attention is needed, most notably from this data, absence. As previously mentioned, we are looking to become increasingly data-driven, and the link business partners that work with the various directorates are now meeting on a regular basis with their directors to have meaningful conversations around this data and what it is telling them, and therefore what steps might need to be taken. In addition, the data is showing a potential increase in turnover, and we need to be mindful of the potential impact of LGR on recruitment and retention, alongside, again, the existing recruitment and retention issues that are being reported nationally. It's hoped that the people strategy will support with this, and I will, as I mentioned earlier, provide an overview, I think, at the next item, or maybe the one after that. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. Does anybody have any questions for Councillor Barlow? Ian, please come ahead.
Thank you. Obviously, the sickness rate has gone up slightly, which you tried to explain. We talk about this long-term sickness as one of the reasons that drives this compared to the private sector. Obviously, I mean, I presume they have long-term sickness as well. I just wondered, can we compare their long-term sickness with our long-term sickness? Is that different, or is that about the same sort of thing? It just concerns me, obviously, if you start adding up the difference between the private sector and the public sector, you know, the days lost for the 500 people on average, we're talking about nearly £500,000 on an average wage. So obviously that's a big chunk of money that we could, if we were the same as the private sector, do that. And I also realise it's been a very hot summer, which obviously can sometimes skew the figures.
Worth noting as well that we're in the middle of a rise of COVID again. Hooray. Not.
And if you look back, that has happened quite regularly. If you look at where we've had spikes to do with heat waves and things like that as well, whether there can...
I think also worth pointing out that a significant number of, well, the services that were required to provide over the summer to account for the increase in headcount over the summer, such as bin emptying and loo cleaning, mean that we have to employ agency workers on a short-term temporary basis over the summer. So it is worth highlighting that these services are quite significantly stepped up over the summer for people who would make comments about the emptying of bins. They are emptied far more frequently in the summer, and the cleaning of the loos is done far more frequently in the summer. But we just are in the very fortunate position that we have a lot of visitors in the summer, and so we need to provide these services at an increased rate in the summer. Gemma, did you, sorry, Ian, you did have a question in there, didn't you? Or was it?
I had a question. I was just asking whether we have a benchmark on long-term sickness for the private sector as well, or, you know, is that just something
I think we
do?
benchmark mostly against other local authorities because it's like for like, but I'm sure Gemma will provide some information.
Best practice, Chair, would be whatever the private sector is doing if they're doing it better. So that's.
But would it though? Why? Would it though? Because we have a very, very different sort of working environment in that the private sector is able to adapt its activities to the market, whereas we have statutory services that we have to deliver that we cannot deviate from. And so we have to do that sometimes in an increasingly difficult economic and legislative climate. So I'm not sure you can really compare, like, it's not like for like between public and private sector in that respect.
Surely.
Sorry?
It doesn't affect
Well, it does if there's increased frontline violence and aggression, or if departments end up understaffed because there's nationwide shortages of in particular areas. Of course it does. But anyway, I'm going to hand this over to Gemma and see what she has to say.
So we have benchmarked with I think it's 5.5% in the annual data against the more diverse range of organisations, just to show how we're comparing, obviously, with the private sector. And the CIPD do break some of that down in terms of long-term, medium, short-term absence. And we do attend meetings and have conversations with, you know, HR in other areas and other sectors. I would say the way in which absence, they can be more adaptable in terms of how they manage. So for long-term absence, as an example, how they would manage that can differ for how we may be able to manage that process. So I think it is difficult to, you're not comparing like for like. However, I think it's good to be aware of what's going on, you know, and how that's being managed. But ultimately, the important benchmark for us is how we're comparing against other local authorities, and also how we're comparing against our local neighbouring authorities.
Thank you, Gemma. Are there any more oh, yes, we have Councillor Dumper, please, and then Councillor Levine.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, as a former local government personnel officer anyway, I used to use market-related supplements too, and I just wanted to ask, in terms of turnover rates in those type of professions affected by that, I wondered how you managed the withdrawal of such market supplements, because that's a very sensitive process, and you may in fact put up your turnover rates again afterwards.
Thank you for that question, Tim. So how to manage market supplement rates in a disappearing environment?
In 1 minute, no repetition, deviation.
Or hesitation.
So market supplements, I always refer to them as a bit chicken and egg, because it is absolutely, as you say, once you've put them in place, then as we do the annual review, obviously that highlights if there's still those market forces in place that require that market supplement. But if we have had a steady workforce in that area and we've not had the turnover, what we don't have is the evidence in relation to if we try to recruit to that role, what would that look like? So where one is removed, and obviously there is an example of that, we do have to manage that carefully with the member of staff, and we do take into consideration the impact. So if there is a team of people receiving a market supplement such as surveyors, and we were going to remove it from that, you know, there would be a process in place to manage that. But also in terms of that annual review, we would take into consideration the consequences of removing that and what is the impact for service delivery, risk assess effectively what that would look like. So that's all considered in terms of the annual review, and ensuring that when it is removed, it's done in a managed way.
Thank you, Gemma. I hope does that answer your question, Tim?
Of course, thank you for that. In terms of surveyors in particular, of course, certainly when I was doing that kind of job 20 odd years ago, surveyors were also a big issue. And I think that relates to the way the interaction with the private sector, if you like. And when, like now, we have a government that is pushing build, 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 then the demand for surveyors is going to be quite high.
So apparently maybe a growth industry might help local authorities as well if people wanted to train as surveyors and planners. Yehudi, over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to, again, it's my problem. I'm a retired statistician, and I believe that averages conceal a lot more than they reveal. So could you tell me, agency workers, do some parts of the organization need more agency workers than others? And which ones are they, if I may ask?
Gemma, over to you.
Yes, so similar to the answer before, there are. So street scene being a key example of that, of where there is, and that's, you know, because of the seasonal demand and the ability to fill those, we do need to go to agencies for that. Across the rest of the organisation, it is very much dependent on what's happening, and as we mentioned, a number of those vacancies, a number of those agency staff are temporarily filling vacancies while we're out to advert. So that will depend on where we've lost staff, and then where that needs, you know, we need someone immediately to plug that gap before we get someone permanent in.
Does that answer your question?
Well, really, I was hoping you'd tell me, do we need a lot of agency staff in planning?
Gemma, are
I
you able to answer that?
believe we do have a lot of agency staff in planning, but I can check. I think, again, as we talked about with the health and safety data, we do that overall as the organisation and report that, but we can drill that down and look if there are. I don't believe there are. I don't know.
Members will remember about a year or so ago when we had the issue about community infrastructure levy and the planning applications and the timescales, we were relying on quite a lot of agency staff at that point. But I think then we went out, because it was sitting under me, we went out and we filled those posts with permanent members of staff. So I'm pretty sure we're not relying very heavily on agency staff, but we'll double check.
Yehudi, are you happy now? Wonderful. Okay. Are we ready to move on from this report? Does anyone, nobody has any more burning questions? Okay, fantastic. If you are happy to note the contents of this report and its recommendation, which I cannot remember right now, would you please, yes, to note. Okay, can you please raise your hand now? Yes, and that's unanimous. Thank you very much, Gemma. Right, moving on to agenda item 10, which is our only thing that we actually have to vote on, which is our out of hours policy. And this is back to you, isn't it, Gemma? Yeah. Okay, please, over to you again.
Thank you. Just a quick introduction. So I'm bringing the out of hours policy for approval by the committee following a full consultation process with our recognised trade union, Unison. This policy has been developed to ensure a consistent and transparent corporate approach to the management of out of hours and the associated payment, both for standby and call out when someone is on standby. As mentioned, we've consulted with Unison and we have engaged with staff in the process. And following our latest meeting with Unison and a subsequent review of the policy, Unison have confirmed that they are happy with the policy and its content as presented to you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. Right, questions, comments? Nope, Councillor Loudon, over to you.
Chair, just to move the recommendation that we approve the new policy and we agree the delegated authority as set out there. Can I just say we considered this on the 4th of June at Cabinet, and I think I said there that I welcomed this report or this new policy. I think it's been, and I hope that Mel will agree, I think it's been a long time coming in trying to restructure, refocus our ability to deliver out of hours work, and given the sort of organisation we are and where we sit within the structure of supporting residents and businesses, it's important that we're just not 9 to 5. So therefore we need to have arrangements in place to cover every other time. And we also have taken the opportunity to review what we pay people, and that's right and proper. So, Chair, I propose.
Thank you, John. Worth pointing out that we, as a service provider, we have potential year-round emergencies and at any time of day. And I do remember quite recently something happening on Christmas Day, and I can't remember what it was. We can't just down tools and say, I'm sorry, there's nobody to help because it's Christmas Day. So there's people who are tasked with being on call in those occasions, and it's perfectly right that they should be remunerated for that time. Oh, and suddenly everybody wants to say something. Councillor Hayward first, and then Councillor Dumper, please.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome to the world of being a clerk. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be people who are very deeply sympathetic. Councillor Dumper?
Yeah, I note that all of this has been discussed with Unison, etc., and gone through the processes. I just did seem to think that item 8.1, I think it is, where the statement is that if
69.
If it is 8.1, isn't it? I think. Yeah, mileage claims, that the payment will be made from the normal place of work to the site and back again. Just seemed to me a bit unfair if the person's place of home is further to the incident site than, you know, maybe I've got the wrong impression, but it sounds to me as if just paying from the workplace to the site.
So if somebody
Am I wrong?
on call lives in, say, Lyme Regis, and there's an emergency in Honiton, they would only be reimbursed from Blackdown House to the emergency site. Is that what we're saying? even if they have to come all the way from Lyme Regis.
And the point I'm making is that, of course, when somebody has to drive into work, then of course that's down to their own commuting. But if they are outside work, normally at home, and they are then called in on call, it seems to me that a payment from their place of home to wherever it's happening would be appropriate.
That is a fair comment. Gemma, do you have anything you can respond to that with?
I do. So this is in line with existing policy and also contract, so your contractual workplace. There are tax implications if people start claiming from home, so that's been factored in. Also, people that are undertaking standby are in a role where that is a requirement, and obviously, as earlier in the policy, it talks about how that's determined. So you're in a role where there is that expectation that you would undertake standby, and therefore that understanding. So that's why that is applied. Also, it's to avoid confusion of having lots of different ways of doing things. So because I think, as I mentioned earlier, there has been some confusion around mileage claims. So a consistent approach is important.
I suppose then that people's mileage will come out of their boosted pay, their hourly rate for this kind of response.
Yeah, and we also, it is rare that people need to go to site now because of working at home and all the technology. Generally, people that are on standby will do it from their place of work, from their home. Obviously, it just depends if it's a facilities issue, for example, then they would need to be attending.
If there's an operational matter to attend to, like there's an actual physical emergency. But is there a system then for identifying the person who may be living closest to the incident, or is it a person who would cover the entire area?
Obviously, we can't know where the incident's going to be. So the standby rota would be put in place and considered by that service, and consideration given to if people live far away, how that would be managed, and potentially have a second, if someone lives further away, have a second person available if needed.
Okay, thank you. I'm just conscious that things that might happen in the winter and over the Christmas period could be quite physical things that may require active intervention, and so it would be useful if somebody who lived nearby were able to attend to those rather than drag somebody in from the next county. Right. Does anybody have any more comments? Oh, Councillor Barlow.
I was only going to
You're
say,
surprisingly late.
Well, I know. I was only going to say on that one point there that it can work the other way, of course. If there is an action that happens in Seaton and you happen to live in Seaton, you can claim for about 45 miles because you're going backwards and forwards to work, because that's where it comes from. So there is a swings and roundabouts law of averages. It should average out.
I'm sure people can, but knowing officers as I know them, I suspect they probably wouldn't. So actually, for the organisation, it probably will cut only one way, in fact, and for the staff. So yeah, okay. So is everybody? Yes, Councillor Loudon.
Chair, can I?
Did you propose? You did propose, didn't you?
I'm wishing to propose, yes, certainly. Can't remember whether I did or not.
I think you did.
It's been such a long time. I would just make the point, we're in danger, if I may say, of edging into operational aspects of how this organisation creates its standby rotas. I think that's down to the managers in the organisation to deal with. Our job is to look at what's in front of us, which is the policy, and just to say that in this day and age, trying to work out home to office, etc., mileage and HMRC engagement. I left work 8 years ago. It was a minefield then. So I would just say to colleagues, we have something in front of us that has been through collective bargaining. The trade union concerned has agreed to it. The managers are content with it. So therefore, I'm not sure that this is a point at which we should diverge.
Just to reassure Councillor Loudon, I don't think anybody is suggesting in any way amending this document. It's just that, I guess if issues are highlighted by people on operational duty, then they will be taken into account by HR managers and potentially brought forwards to us at a future date, I'm sure. So I've had a proposer for this proposal. Who would, Tim, would you like to second?
I'll second it. And
Right, so-
in replying to the seconding, I would say yes, and I'm a bit more hands-on than our vice chair. Thank you.
Okay. Ooh. Right. Now we have, voice please. We have a recommendation, we have two recommendations, which is to approve the out of hours policy and to agree delegated authority to our Director of Governance and to the portfolio holder to agree any minor changes to the policy following final comments from Unison. It's proposed and seconded. If you are in favour of adopting these two recommendations, would you please raise your hand now? And that is unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. Right, moving on to agenda item 11, which is the people strategy, and we are welcoming back Gemma. This is like, it used to be the Joe Fellows show, and now it's the Gemma Roberts show. Please, over to you again, Gemma.
Thank you. Okay, so there is, I don't know if you're going to put the slides up, Debbie, or if you're just going to let people look at what they, don't worry, we'll don't worry, we'll do that one. So if I just refer people to the slides that are in their pack that was sent prior to today. So I delivered this presentation at a members' lunch and learn, which some of you were at, so apologies, you're going to hear me again on this one. But I was asked today to provide a recap. So the development of the people strategy is seen as an essential element in showing our commitment to our staff and the recognition of how important they are to the council's success. It's hoped that the strategy will show a clear commitment that will also support with recruitment and retention, given LGR, and will also support staff with that change and that transition. So in your pack, you will see that in terms of the development of the strategy, we have been looking at 3 themes and 3 areas, and the strategy is about enabling our people to connect, grow and thrive. In terms of connect, we're referring to retaining our talent, ensuring they feel connected to each other and the organisation. Growing our staff includes learning and development, our grow our own strategy that we've already talked about this morning, and how we support people to be ready for LGR and what that will entail. And then enabling our staff to thrive, and this is looking at our wellbeing support. So as we've talked about again this morning, absence, how we're supporting people to ensure that they're happy and at work. Equality, diversity and inclusion, supporting our staff with change, which is seen as a key element at this time, and ensuring that our staff have a voice. So for each element of the theme, what we've created at this point is an ambition of sort of how it should feel to work here for people, and then areas of focus that the strategy would look to address. And then behind this would sit a more detailed action plan of how we're going to achieve those things. So just to briefly go through those, for Connect, the ambition is that people have a sense of belonging, are proud to work here, feel engaged, recognised and able to do their best work in a purpose-driven environment focused on excellence in leadership, where people are accountable and connected as one team East Devon. And areas of focus here are connecting our people to one team East Devon, so actually really bringing that to the forefront, and that's what we would use in terms of recruitment, putting ourselves out there in terms of what it means to come and work at East Devon. You know, it's about being that one team and ensure that our values and behaviours are reflective of that. Ensure staff are fully aware of the benefits of working here. So what is our total reward package? At the moment, we have a lot of information spread in various places, and I will often hear staff saying, oh, I wasn't aware that we had that here. So collating all that together and bringing that into in one place. And also fostering a diverse and inclusive environment, which links to our Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Action Plan. And then grow, the ambition is that everyone feels able to grow and develop in a way that works for them and the organisation, putting people in the best place for the future, and that managers are clear on expectations and develop to be highly capable, positive, confident and dynamic. And the key focus in this area is the manager. So as we all know, we only have a finite amount of money and resource. So we were looking at how can we have the greatest impact across the organisation, and the manager is the most important part in that, and often people leave managers rather than organisations. And so putting that attention and focus on both our existing managers but also our aspiring managers in developing a management programme that also sets very clear expectations of what it means to be a manager here at East Devon. Continuing what's good, so grow our own, and continuing the great work that is happening there, and then also reviewing our learning and development offer. So often a lot of what we deliver at the moment is either e-learning or face-to-face training, and just diversifying that to support people in how they learn best and what works for them. And then finally, Thrive. So the ambition here is for people to feel they have a voice, that they're happy, healthy here and thriving and feeling ready for change and equipped to continue making a meaningful impact in the communities we serve, and that people are trusted and valued and they own their own performance, career and growth. And here we'd be looking to focus on change and resilience and how we support our staff with that. Voice, so developing a continuous feedback cycle, and we have recently done a staff survey which hasn't been done for a while. That closed in August, and we're currently in the process of analysing that. We did have a 60% return rate, which we were really pleased with, and we will bring back the findings to Personnel Committee in relation to that. We're then looking to introduce regular, what are referred to as pulse surveys, so that we can continually understand how our staff are feeling using the most recent survey as a benchmark for that. Also, we talked first health and safety item this morning. We talked about staff feeling safe, and that's features here. So one team East Devon feeling safe and supported. That has come through. So as part of this piece of work, we have been engaging with staff. We have done focus groups. Obviously, the staff survey, an important part of that. And that's come through very strongly, that staff, the way they can feel valued is by knowing that they are supported and protected in the work that they are doing. And then again, continuing what's good in terms of our Happy Healthy Here initiatives. So as referred to, there's just 2 slides there that talk about our behaviours, and we are doing a refresh of our behaviours rather than introducing a complete new set, because that takes time to embed. So it was felt better to refresh that with a document that will show what good looks like and then what the impact of that behaviour should be. And this will link with the new customer charter that is being produced. And then also linked to that, we have developed new management commitments, again, linked to what I talked about before, in terms of being really clear with managers what is expected of them. Finally, there's just a roadmap to launch. Some of this is obviously in the past, but in terms of where we are at the moment, we are reviewing that staff survey to feed into the final version of the strategy, and we will then finalise that and plan to launch at the end of October. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. Are there any questions? Oh, Yehudi, you got in there first.
It's not a question, it's an announcement. Sorry, I've got to go home and relieve my wife's carer.
We will not be very much longer anyway, but thank you very much. And thank you for coming, and thank you for this delicious cake. And please, take some away again, Yehudi. Is that people putting their hands up for cake? Next, I'm going to go chopping and changing. Since it's the last item, I'm going to chop and change. I'm going to go to Ian, because he had his hand up next.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure everyone's going to say it's a wonderful report and all the rest of it. I've looked through it, and I must admit, I realise this is...
Shh, please.
I realise this is...
We can't hear Councillor Boller's comments.
I realise this is best practice and all the rest of it, and very pretty. I just wonder, how much did it cost to do this? I look with the amount of strategy we've had to have workshops, ELT, SLT stuff. Do we ever keep a record of what these report sort of things cost of time?
Of course we keep a record, Councillor Boller.
Time and effort. Just because the management commitments, I mean, again, I'm a great believer in there's no such thing as
HR.
bad staff, just bad management. And at the end of the day, what were the management doing before if this is their new commitments? But you're saying you're refreshing it, so I'm glad to hear that, because that seems pretty basic to me. But yes, cost was the main thing, please.
Well, I'm sure Gemma is about to tell us that it's all rolled into the budget for HR, but yes. So I, for one, am very grateful that this organisation reviews its management styles every so often to keep in line with developments. Gemma, do you have any specific answer?
I don't know if it's a specific answer, but in terms of cost, absolutely, it's not, there's no additional cost. It's been staff, staff time, my time to produce that. And the work then that obviously then there's been that engagement with staff to ensure that there's that buy-in so it is successful. With the management commitments, what I would say is what we have at the moment is a variety of documents that tell managers what they should be doing, which I think is therefore causing some confusion. So it's about combining that and bringing it together. So there's one clear document that says, you know, this is the expectations of you as a manager.
Thank you very much, Gemma. Next up, we have Councillor Hayward. Paul, please.
Thank you. It's not a question. It's are we sort of are we debating, or it's just an observation I wish to make again, just on this. Is that permissible? Yeah. Thank
Please
you.
Please do. Let's roll it all into one.
It
As long
sort
as
of
we don't
follows on
extemporise.
from Councillor Barlow's point. It is important that we do this, and yes, it costs money. But unless you focus and provide a plan, you can never achieve what you want to achieve, because you've got to focus somewhere. And unfortunately, in local government, there's always a cost for everything we do. But it's an observation, and it's relevant to East Devon. It's relevant to every business, I think, that there are often people in business, in businesses, who have either work here, and it's fair to say perhaps don't want to work here anymore, but carry on. When I moved to Axminster nearly 20 years ago, there was a business, and I routinely went in there and was just met by people who evidently shouldn't have been there. They should work somewhere else because they didn't enjoy it. They told me they didn't enjoy it. They didn't like working there. They didn't like the job. They didn't like their work colleagues. They didn't like their managers, didn't like the customers, and yet there they were, still working. And it's by managing and looking at behavioural issues that actually we get the best out of people, because there is, as we all know, an ever-decreasing pot of money and an ever-decreasing demand for services in local government. And East Devon is a machine with lots of little cogs, and they all should work in perfect unison, but it only takes one cog to stop or go backwards, and the whole machine grinds to a halt, and that breeds resentment, it breeds inefficiency, and that then manifests itself in a whole variety of ways. So it's important we do this, and that managers are given the trust and responsibility and the tools to manage their teams and have blunt discussions, have blunt yet ultimately worthwhile discussions with staff, and say, if you are not happy, how can we make you happy? If we go down that route and we still can't make you happy, actually, local government may not be the job for you. There are other jobs are available. No one is holding a gun to anyone's head, sorry to use that metaphor, but no one is forcing anyone to work here. And on this, I think it is important, because we need everyone to be firing on most of their cylinders. Not all their cylinders, not everyone can work 100% all the time. But the challenge to local government is so acute now. We can't, as an employee, have people who are either actively working against what we're trying to achieve or are stymieing other people's ability to deliver. We just don't have that luxury anymore. So I'm incredibly grateful to Gemma and her team for putting this together. It is essential because it provides, the thing here, it provides a framework for us to work to and give tools to managers and supervisors and ELT, SLT to get the best out of everyone who works here, because that's a necessity and it's essential. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. I, for one, am very grateful that our organisation focuses on the happy, healthy and here, because the alternative is unhappy, unhealthy and not here. And we already have recruitment problems. And the last thing we need in a customer-facing job, essentially, is people who don't want to be there, as you say. And so, actually, you don't maybe you asked the wrong question, Councillor Barlow. Maybe the question should be, what is the cost of not doing this? So, yeah, I'm not asking you to extemporise because I also have to leave to take my daughter to college at some point quite soon. So we will move on swiftly, I'm afraid. Tim, quickly.
Quickly. Yeah, just to underline what Paul has to say, yeah, very important. Carrying on from where we were before, and thank you, Gemma, for bringing us this. And particularly, I'm sorry I didn't attend your briefing before. I apologise for that. Couple of quick comments on the behavioural principles. I wondered whether you might add simplicity and accuracy in communication, because I think accuracy where we're involved as a council is a very important thing. And the other one is that weasel word accountability. And I don't want to start a big debate here, but accountability can mean all sorts of things to all sorts of people. Just be careful with it.
Gemma, quickly.
Just to say that we will say what that means for East Devon. So for each one, it will say, this is what that means here. So the interpretation is the same for everybody, because we're mindful that different words mean different things to different people. Yeah.
And I would sincerely hope we didn't need to explain that people need to provide accurate information. I mean, obviously, mistakes do happen. Sometimes people accidentally say, but simplicity in communication so that everybody can access it, I think, is a good aim. Right, last up we have, is that you, John?
Yes.
Okay, John.
2 points, Chair, quickly. The first is that I think this is wholly appropriate. It's coincidental. It's come at this point as we move into the next item on the agenda, which is local government reorganisation. And all I would say, if anybody is feeling slightly cynical about all of this, or perhaps not quite getting it, I've sat in Paris listening to the chief executive of a European utility company praising this sort of approach that they've adopted across various countries that they operate in, and I've seen it in other big private utility companies, international ones as well. So it's not just the woke local government, it is also the big cutting edge private industries that take this approach. It's good practice. Sorry.
It's very, very good. Taking the mood of an organisation regularly has got to be best practice, because otherwise you end up with big, not good surprises. Right. Are we happy to note this recommendation and move on? If you're happy to note it, would you please raise your hand now? Okay, thank you. Everybody unanimous. Perfect. Moving on to our last agenda item, which is agenda item 12 on LGR. And it's over to you, Gemma, for a verbal update, please. Thank you.
Okay, so there are just a couple of slides. So this is just a very quick update. Obviously, LGR is significant for our staff, and staff briefings have been held, with the latest held on the 18th of August. We'll just show you some slides that were part of that briefing. At this stage, the key next date for staff is July 2026, which is when we will hopefully get some clarity on what the new authority will look like. At this point, it's difficult to provide particular specific sort of reassurance to our staff in terms of what will happen. However, what we can provide reassurance on is that TUPE, which is detailed on the next slide, and this is what we have explained to staff, will apply. So the transfer of undertaking protection of employment regulations, all the staff will transfer to the new authority, and the slide just details what that means, so that they transfer on existing terms and conditions, so providing what reassurance we can at this stage. We also have then highlighted on the next slide, in terms of Happy Healthy Here, what we've talked about, some of those things that are available to our staff, and how they can be supported, adding in that change and resilience element, which we are, although the people strategy hasn't launched, we are still trialling a couple of workshops there to get initial feedback on how people find those. Also, we have just highlighted timescales, alongside the timescale, sorry, we have provided what the next steps are. So that is on the next slide. I talked about the people strategy to staff, you know, as I've just talked to you about, and about how that's showing our commitment and wanting to get them ready and in the best possible place for LGR. And then them being clear in terms of what the next steps are. We have had some feedback as part of the staff survey that we have noted in terms of the initial analysis that will come out. So that will provide us some helpful insight in terms of how staff are feeling and how LGR and the thought of LGR is impacting on the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. Understandably, a major upheaval of this nature is likely to cause stress to our employee body. And so it's good that they are being regularly appraised of what's going on so that they can feel more serene that their needs are being considered and that they will not end up suffering from this change. Does anybody have any questions for Gemma about this? Are you able to share these slides with members of the committee or with councillors? Thank you. Thank you. Debbie's going to send them out to everybody. I took pictures, but you will get them in your inboxes as well. Does anybody have any comments? Well, thank you very much, Gemma, for that update, and congratulations again on your promotion. And I think this brings our meeting to an end. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you to anybody watching online, and safe trip home, everybody. Thank you.